Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Eric?
I have been very sick since Turkey Day.
Man, we need to start collecting data on, like, here's the episodes where Eric says he's sick, because I feel like it's I don't know, I wouldn't say the majority, but it's a lot.
The daycare is just a real kick in the teeth.
It is. I think I told you before, we were on a cadence where I think that the kids would get sick every 2 weeks, basically. Like one of them would, because we have 3, right? So there's like the odds increase that one of them is going to be sick. But now that 2 of them are in school and the other one is, getting farther along there, it's less common now. But we were in that same boat.
Yeah, you texted me last night. You're like, yeah, you sounded horrible.
I'm glad we didn't record last night. So
yeah, I'm sounding better today, but it wasn't for lack of trying, because I was coughing all night instead of sleeping. So today I'm like all cough medicine. So if I'm a little weirder than normal, that's probably why.
Yep, that's okay.
Normal weird plus.
That. Yep, we like that here. What else is new?
I've been working on some debug quality of life stuff for Excalibur. I've got like a whole bunch of new debug draw stuff in there, including like optimizing debug draw for speed. So like it now sequences the renderers in an order that is advantageous for performance, which is good. And then there's going to be a plugin update or a browser extension update that has a lot more bells and whistles. So I've added 10 different new things you can toggle on and off and mess with. And there's some community contributions in there that haven't been released yet too, including one from Adam Dewey Hansen that allows you to identify an actor from the inspector list. So if you click on it, it'll flash inside the game, which is kind of cool.
That's like in your browser developer tools where you can like highlight an element.
Exactly.
Cool.
Actually, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we have a new Sprite Fusion update from one of our core contributors, Justin, that will allow sprite attributes from Sprite Fusion. Hugo just added the ability to add like arbitrary key value attributes to tiles, which is great for us because that unlocks a lot of potential for custom scripting and game logic generation inside the editor for your designers.
Cool. Nice.
So we're cranking with that. I, in theory, will release that sometime this week. But if you want to live off of main, it's already merged in.
Cool. Sweet. Sounds good. Hey, what about your Turkey Day?
It was good. We had 3 Turkey days.
Wow.
So I was very full. I optimized my consumption for pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
So I
definitely had some.
I reeled back on a lot of the food so that I could consume more dessert.
That's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had homemade ice cream with the pumpkin pie, so definitely had some of that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, we had a good time. There was no drama, which is always a risk with family Thanksgivings.
Yeah.
But
That's
it
nice.
was a very pleasant Thanksgiving.
Yep, same here. Everybody had a lot of fun. We also had Cassie's mom visit. So grandma visited. She actually was visiting one side of her family here in the Twin Cities, and then she came and spent some time with us. Otherwise, I've just been trying to ship my next feature set for keep track of my games, the playthroughs and completions tracking.
It's cool looking.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to you about it on the side, but we're getting to the point now where I've got the test coverage is there. It's mostly refactored into a way that is going to make sense. Like, is hopefully not going to have big data schema changes. I've got the migration script all working. So really, it's just tying up some loose ends with some of the missing features that are important for the general release. So my goal is this week. I want to be able to ship it this week to at least get it under the feature flag, and then I can test it more thoroughly in production.
Nice.
Yeah.
Grip it and rip it. Send it to prod.
That's
go,
right.
Go.
Well, we've got some cool news for the week of November 24th. Actually, as we started recording today, the TypeScript team just dropped a new blog post on progress for TypeScript 7. Now, of course, we covered a lot of what's going to be happening in 6.7 in our last episode with Daniel and Jake. So you should go listen to that. But what's nice about the blog post is that just gives you just a nice written guide of pretty much everything that we talked about and some stuff that we didn't talk about. So we'll point that out. But the main thing to take away is that you could probably start using TSGo right now. And especially in your editor, it should just work pretty well. So I've been experimenting with TSGo for Excalibur, our code base, and I enabled TSGo in VS Code, and there's been no issues so far. Where it will start to get a little bit more dicey is when you actually try to do a full build, and if you need certain features. For library authors, one of those features is like declaration emit, and that is still a work in progress. But I ran it today, and there's some minor differences in the output, but it's mostly pretty good. There was some like non-breaking differences, and then there's maybe one breaking change that could be a known issue. So I would say just go for it and try it out. I mean, I literally just changed the command from TSC to TSGo, and that was it. And it just worked. And it was about 5 times faster.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's on like a fresh build, not even incremental. So pretty massive speed up. And if you do need to do like a full build for your project and you're using a bundler like Vite, you probably will need to look into some of the more preview packages like Vite rolldown preview in order to use TypeScript Go. So just keep that in mind if you are not just building with plain TSC. But I think one thing I think that would be useful for our listeners is maybe to go over some of the differences that are expected against 5.9. So if you're looking at upgrading to TypeScript 6 and 7, there are some deprecations, and we went through some of them on the last episode, but I think it would just be helpful to go through each one of them really quickly in just a single list.
Yeah, some of the big ones that, maybe bear repeating is strict is going to be enabled by default, which I think most people maybe thought that was the case. That was the case for the tsconfig generation, but now the CLI is -s strict by default, which was kind of a foot gun before, because you might have expected it to be that. So that'll be changing. I don't think that'll surprise anyone. The target is now going to be the latest stable ECMAScript, which also I think was a foot gun now that we're correcting. And I think this is just going to be good because it's going to be smaller emit and it's going to be better JavaScript for browsers in general. And if you need to down level, there's plenty of great bundlers that can take, ES syntax and down level it. So I think this will just be a net positive.
Yeah, and I mean on that point, the lowest supported target will be ES 2015. So they're removing ES5, and ES3 was already gone, already deprecated. So
that's a decade ago, by the way.
Yes.
ES6 was a decade ago.
Yep. And so right now the latest stable ECMAScript target would be ES 2025. So that's what it's going to default to. But whenever that latest stable target changes, that'll be the default target. So you might have to change that in your tsconfig if you're relying on something older than ES 2015.
One thing, base URL is going to be completely removed. That's no longer a thing, which is going to be great.
Yes, and that is an update that I had to make to the Excalibur code base, but it was super minor. And there actually is if you do need to use base URL because we were using base URL dot, like that dot value, which is like the relative value, you can actually just you can add a new entry into your paths that basically gives you the same functionality. So that's what I did.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And that's kind of the more idiomatic approach now with package JSON type stuff. The next thing is module resolution for like Node. The one that is called Node or Node 10 is going to be removed in favor of either using the bundler module resolution or Node Next, which is like the latest way that Node handles imports.
Yep.
rootdir is changing to the current directory by default, and the outdir either requires an explicit rootdir for the top level source, or it'll be in the same directory as the tsconfig, which is kind of a completely reasonable default in my opinion. I actually am surprised it didn't work that way already.
Yeah, I mean, we use rootdir for our vtest configs, but since we have it explicitly set, this didn't affect the migration when I enabled it. But if you are not setting an explicit rootdir, this might be a change that you have to make if you'd expected the current directory. Cool. And that's basically the highlights for what's going to be different, but they do have a link to check out the issue tracker if you want the full list of deprecations, because there's more than just these ones, but these are probably the biggest ones. One cool thing though that we didn't talk about on the episode was that the team has been experimenting with a tool called TS5-6 to help update your tsconfig automatically. So the tool uses heuristics on extends and references to help update other projects in your codebase. Currently, it can only update the base URL and rootdir settings, but more might be added in the future. So that's pretty sweet. So we'll keep a watch on that for you and see if there's more news to come as that tool evolves. Otherwise, there are some changes with like the emit pipeline. So one thing that they call out is that if you do rely on JavaScript emit, that's not entirely complete. But if you don't need JavaScript emit, so that would be like if you're using a bundler, like we use Vite, but if you're using ESBuild or Babel, or if you're targeting modern runtimes, then it should just work. But if you do rely on TypeScript to target older runtimes and support for down-level compilation, then you may need to wait. And then they also call out another issue is that our new watch mode might be less efficient than the existing TypeScript compiler in some scenarios. So you can find other solutions like running NoDaemon and tsgo with the incremental flag. So hopefully that will be addressed in the future. And then this was a big one, and we did talk about this, but if you're a tooling creator, like a tooling maintainer, TypeScript 7 out of the box is not going to support the existing compiler API, the Strata API, which makes sense because this one is in Go and that one was in JavaScript. So just all that is not going to work, but they are still trying to figure out what they're going to do with it. So that means any tools like linters, formatters, IDE extensions that rely on the Strata API will not work with Corsa, which is TypeScript 7. So, I mean, that's pretty big, I would say, like, because we use TypedDoc and stuff. So by not having support for that out of the box with 7, it's might be hard for us to fully migrate over to TypeScript 7 until we have something that can generate docs. But obviously when we talk to the team, like they know that. And so they are working on, whatever 7.1, 7.2, whatever is going to come after 7 is when they're going to introduce a new compiler API.
And we might just be living in a world where we have to run our doc generation like with an older version, which should be fine because it should be like, apples to apples emit.
Yes. Yeah. So that brings us to TypeScript 6, which is going to be the last JavaScript release of TypeScript. And TypeScript 6 should be basically one-to-one with TypeScript 7. So everything that runs in TypeScript 6 should be able to just run in TypeScript 7. And so that's with all the deprecations and everything like that. And so you basically just think of TypeScript 6 as a bridge to 7.0. So that's why we can probably safely still use TypeDoc and stuff with TypeScript 6 and then just run the main build with TypeScript 7.
That's right.
And that's not like a huge deal because a lot of our doc generation happens in CI anyway, not necessarily locally. And at least for our code base, it's not like a deal breaker.
No, and it doesn't change our value prop here either because the speed is going to be the big thing of development, and we're not generating docs typically on our dev cycle.
And I mean, if you think about it, we don't necessarily run builds all the time anyway locally. Like I'm 90% in my editor working. So because TSGo works so well already in the editor, I just have it enabled and life is good like right now. And it's only when I need to generate new types for like the doc site or something like that, or I need to test the build, that's when I'll run build. So I think for day-to-day, everyday use, just enabling it in your editor is pretty cool.
Next up, Advent of Code is live this year. There is a small change to Advent of Code. They're only doing puzzles up to the 12th day of December, but there's still two stars per puzzle this year, so you still get your 24 puzzles. The maintainer is just saying that he needs more. He needs more time. It's very hard to do, and he does it for free. And we enjoy Advent of Code every year. This year, I'm going to be doing Advent of Code in Zig. I downloaded the latest stable Zig as of this recording, which I think is 0.15.2, and I've been playing around with Zig to solve the first puzzle. I'm a day behind already. It is an Advent of Code if I'm not behind.
Yeah, I think I made it to puzzle number 5 or something last year, and I wanted to learn Dino, so I did it in just native Dino. This year, I probably don't have time. I mean, realistically, I have to ship some stuff for my app, but I think in my heart of hearts, I was just telling you I'd like to learn Elixir or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe even Rust.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And Advent of Code is a nice kind of avenue to do that. So.
Yeah, that's how in past years I've treated it, as a very useful vehicle for learning a new language. And then, it forces you, at least in previous years, has forced me to reckon with how to operate with strings in whatever language you pick, operate with data in whatever language you pick, which really makes you work hard.
Yes.
Especially when you pick C, like I did last year.
Yep. Yes, it does. All right. Next up, meta framework news. Svelte did have a minor release, but it introduced a pretty major API. So I'm not a Svelte developer, so I'm probably going to describe this incorrectly. But from the release notes and the documentation, the way that you would hydrate the client from the server side in Svelte, it would basically execute your server-side fetch twice. Once when it loads the page, and then another when it runs the hydration, the serialization. And so it's kind of like a double fetch issue. So Svelte 5.44 introduces the hydratable API, and this solves that problem. So you basically just wrap your fetch with hydratable, and then it does some magic to like mark that as being serializable. And there are rules around like what can be serialized. But one thing that is neat is that they're using a third-party package that can serialize some more complex types like sets and maps and even like URL and stuff like that. So it's not just limited to like, oh, it has to be JSON. It actually can use some JavaScript types that are safely serializable. So that's pretty cool. But I think this is pretty major news for Sveltians. Is that the word? I don't know. What do you call yourself when you use Svelte?
I think you're Svelters.
Svelters, yeah. Whatever.
Maybe you're just Svelte.
Exactly.
A Svelte man about town.
Anyway, if you use Svelte, you're probably pretty happy about this. So I wanted to give a shout out to Svelte. And that also means that it's in SvelteKit. I don't know which version exactly, but Svelte 5.44 was the one that introduced this.
And if you are interested in that library that handles that serialization, it's called dvalue. That's DE value, all lowercase. And it looks like Rich Harris is one of the main contributors of that one.
Perfect.
Definitely a good library to take a look at there if you need to look at serializing some stuff.
Sounds good.
Next on the list is Vite Plus. Vite Plus just dropped a new FAQ that might help you understand a little bit more about what Vite Plus is and isn't. So they have kind of their common questions, and the 4 common questions they have on there is, how do frameworks benefit from Vite Plus? Is it paid now? Is Vite paid software now? What impact will Vite Plus have on Vite and other open source projects? And can I use Vite Plus in my own tooling? And the answer is it's all good news. It's none of it's goofy, and none of it's like rug pulley. It's all good news. So, but if you're interested in the details, definitely go check out that FAQ. But it's all good. Suffice it to say, it's all good news.
Yep. Sounds good. And Vite Plus, just to note too, and it mentions this in the FAQ, but if you're an open source developer, you can use Vite Plus for free. So that's pretty cool.
Yep. It's all very reasonable stuff, I think, if you're trying to do a business in software, in open source software specifically. Next up, this hit the Blue Sky feed on my feed, but Zed 0214.0 now drops with better TypeScript error messages. And this is kind of a inspired, if I understand correctly, this is inspired from a VS Code extension that we've recommended in the past. I think it's like better errors or something. I forget what it's called now. But basically, it makes your editor errors look a lot better in TypeScript. And it's kind of like table stakes for me. It's one of my default go-tos in VS Code.
Do you want to remind people what Zed is?
Yeah, Zed. So Zed is a minimal code editor crafted for speed and collaboration with humans and AI, and it's written from scratch in Rust. So that's that's what's good, right? So that's their selling point. To leverage multi-core CPUs and to leverage your GPU. They have an emphasis on integrating with LLMs in your workflow, which I think is a big part of the selling point. And then they also have a lot of like collaborative features so that you can collaborate in editor with your team.
That's
and I think
cool.
that includes like writing code together, sharing screens in the editor together. And I think there is even a chat, like a legit like voice chat. Like you can, it's got like telephony in it. If I'm not mistaken.
You can do that with VS Code. We used to do that. It was called Live Share at the time, but I think that they've changed that terminology. But it was super nice for pair programming.
Now we use Live Share at work a lot. A lot of our team really likes it.
That's cool.
Let's see, next up on the list, we have a new release from TypeScript ESLint. Version 8.48 has just been released. And on their release notes, there is a new rule, which is no redundant type constituents. This is using assignability checking for redundancy checks. So that's kind of nice. So if you have redundant type definitions, it'll let you know.
Very nice. Well, that'll be cool. There is one library watch that I came across on, I don't remember now if it was Blue Sky or Reddit, somewhere. This is called Spikard. That's Spikard. It is a Polyglot API toolkit. So what does that mean? If you think about Express or Hano, which are like Node.js API servers, basically, like they're toolkits you can build an API, with that library. This is basically the same thing, except that it works across multiple languages. So it has the same API surface or works the same way in TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Rust, PHP, and more. And it's built on a Rust core. So if you're using Rust, you'll get your native Rust performance. If you're using TypeScript, then you're using, whatever behind the scenes. It works on multiple runtimes. So you can pick and choose. And so this would be pretty useful if you need to write multiple APIs in multiple languages and you just want I just want a consistent way to build my APIs in my one project that uses multiple languages. This would be a good fit for that.
I have a library watch here next. Optique 0.7 from Hongmin He. And this is a type-safe CLI for TypeScript. That's just real friendly. It has did you mean typo suggestions, and it has Zod and Valbot schema validation out of the box. So you can pick whichever one floats your boat. It has duplicate option detection and context-aware error messages. So it knows what options were fed in to help you build messages that make sense for whatever you were passed. So might be something to check out in your next CLI app.
Cool. Ready for some community highlights?
Yeah. The first one we missed last week, but Marco Ippolito wrote a great blog post that makes me pine for the fjords or pine for Italy. But it's a really great blog post about documenting just kind of how the whole summer of shipping TypeScript in Node went, and some really gorgeous photos. He talks about kind of the whole process that he went down, some of the dead ends that he hit, some of the bad ideas he had, and how it all went. And then at the end, he used some money to buy a brand new bread machine and make some great bread.
Yeah. And so we have Marco to thank for shipping type stripping in Node. So he kind of goes into some of the background of He was brand new on the technical steering committee, sort of felt like, hey, I would like to, make some sort of impact. Like, I want to have an impact on Node. And so when the issue came up of like, could we implement some type of type stripping natively in Node? He was like, I'm going to try that, and ran with it. And now look where we are now. So I would say a pretty big impact on the ecosystem there.
No, I'm really glad that he persisted, even though being on the Node technical steering committee is definitely in the internet thankless job territory. With a lot of haters, certainly, that are lobbing criticism your way. It can't make it easy, but I'm really glad he persisted. And this is just making everything better for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from us, I would say thank you on behalf of the community. So thanks for all your hard work, Marco.
Yeah, thank you. The next one I have is an article from John Reilly, a open source software engineer. He has an article about yargs, which is a popular library for building command line interfaces in Node that are strongly typed. So what's really cool here is it's got a lot of like the factory builder pattern. So if you're like a .NET dev, you're probably very familiar with the builder pattern where you have like, I'm going to do a thing, dot another thing, dot another thing, dot another thing to configure an object. So the same deal here. What's cool is that all of these give you strong TypeScript types. You can, dot complete with impunity and build like a really rich command line interface really quickly.
Yargs I've used in the past, super powerful. It is worth noting that Node Core also has a utility called parse args, and that is great for simple use cases. It is not designed for making fully fledged CLI apps. But if you have a need to just take in, process.argv and like parse them into an actual object, that's what parse args is good at. And I think it has TypeScript support too when I last used it. But yeah, pretty sweet stuff. Next up from Telerik, we have a blog post that they put out on using Zod and TypeScript. So this is a more introductory blog post. If you are new to Zod and you haven't really used it before, it goes through how to do schema validation, and then unsurprisingly shows you how to integrate that with their Kendo UI React framework and components to create validated forms and stuff. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, makes sense too, because you definitely want to validate stuff you're getting from users in a form.
Yes.
And Zod is a great way to do that.
Exactly.
Or any schema validator. And next, I added a YouTube video from YouTuber TypedRocks. Christian has a new video about how to use lowercase and uppercase type intersection to get is alphabet or is symbol helper types. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Ooh.
And definitely check it out. It's a cool way to get at like is an alphabet character without having to enumerate all of the alphabet characters, more than 26 upper and lowercase, but all of the ones from international languages as well. So it's definitely worth a watch. It's pretty cool. It's definitely something I might need to use.
That's pretty awesome. Consider this your secret of the handbook for today's episode.
Yeah, type intersections are awesome. And using inverted types is also awesome. Next up, I have a talk from Brad Zacher via Rob Palmer on Blue Sky about improving Bazel TypeScript type checks with isolated declarations. So definitely check this out. But some key highlights from the talk are these type checks are now infinitely parallelizable, because if you have isolated modular declarations, you don't have to worry about traversing the graph.
Mm-hmm.
It explains the difference between the TS and D.TS TypeScript dependency graphs and how they can help scale the TypeScript checker. It made local builds 2x faster, so you didn't have to wait for CI, which is nice. So like if you have a big repo and like maybe your dev machine is not a build machine, you might do that push and pray to see how it does.
Yes.
So you could do work locally without having to like break your flow. Next up, I have a blog post from Aapo Alasuutari. We'll go with that. I'm sorry that I said your name wrong, probably. But talking about data-oriented TypeScript / JavaScript. And one of the like key benefits here is it makes things be very fast if you do things data-oriented. So this is a incredibly in-depth blog post about how to make his data structure for a fundamental directed acyclic graph, underlying the flow of data in his automation system, be fast. So, like kind of like the naive approach where you're doing like, you got a map of nodes and you're storing them, didn't really work for him. So he goes into quite the deep dive into like how to make this run fast across large data sets. And he's, spoiler alert, he uses typed arrays to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check out this blog post on how to optimize data structures to make your massive data structures run fast.
Yep.
And so
right.
kind of the conclusion here is that, typed arrays and array buffers are massive objects in the V8 engine. And if you have only a few objects, then maybe typed arrays aren't for you. But if you have like tens of, thousands of millions of objects, typed arrays make a lot of sense, especially because they give you a lot of this cache coherency guarantees, and they allow you to make things very fast.
Yeah, so I think for extra context, these two things are related, right? So Aapo is working on that Nova engine, which is the new Rust engine, and it's still experimental, but it's powering the new Andromeda Rust-based runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. So he's building, an alternative to V8, right? And so this is a in-depth engineering blog post on like how he's trying to optimize the memory efficiency of the data model. So yeah, pretty neat. So you can go follow Aapo to see more progress on Nova and how it's going. But we'll also keep you updated here too.
Yeah, and one of the key like wins here is the memory usage that he saw went from like 10 megabytes to a bit over 1 megabyte.
Yeah, 10x reduction.
Effectively, he's compacting this data into a binary representation by using typed arrays.
That's pretty sweet stuff.
Next, I have a shout out for another podcast, Software Engineering Daily. Friends of the show, Josh Goldberg and Dimitri Metropolis, talk about Doom in TypeScript. So if you want more Doom in TypeScript, go check out that episode of that podcast.
Nice.
So we've added a link to that as well.
Do you like jokes, Eric?
I love jokes.
Cool. Well, we've got a Bleet of the Week that came across my Blue Sky feed from Holly Jolly, and they said, "I'm written in TypeScript. That's why I look like I make sense on the surface, but in reality, I'm actually constantly lying to you."
That's awesome.
We make fun of TypeScript here because we like it.
That's right.
All right. You have some cool links?
Yeah, I have been watching a bunch of Lego YouTubers lately building absolutely bonkers things. And there's this one, Nate from the internet, is building a like 20x scaled 3D printed castle, Lego castle.
Wow.
So it's adult human sized Lego.
Wow.
And it's like, I think he's got like 10-part video series now, but it's really awesome to see like, wow, you can like 3D print some really cool stuff here, including like 20 times as large Lego bricks and build a castle.
That has to use an obscene amount of material to like 3D print that.
I'm sure the material costs alone have been outrageous, but I think it's sponsored by a 3D printer company. So
okay, there you go.
I think they're footing the bill.
That
would be awesome if they could foot the bill for me to build a Lego castle, a life-size Lego castle.
That's amazing. This last weekend, so my wife had a 5-day weekend because she had off, obviously, for Turkey Day. So for our date night, we watched The Predators, which is, part of the Predator, film series. It was pretty enjoyable, I would say. Yeah. So it's a cool watch if you are looking for some fun Predator movies. In order to prep yourself for Predator Badlands that's coming out.
Sure.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we're kind of excited about because we really liked Prey, this is by the same director. This is a sequel to Prey.
I heard that was really good.
It was very good. Yeah. So we kind of want to go see Predator Badlands, but we might have to wait, till it reaches streaming. Otherwise, I watched like 4 or 5 videos for dotnetconf, which was about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So if you're a .NET dev, I highly recommend going through some of those talks. There's a lot of cool stuff in .NET 10. It's a lot faster and a lot more memory efficient in a lot of ways. Pretty exciting. And then we mentioned a talk in the last episode on taking the .NET out of .NET Aspire. So I did watch that talk, and it's pretty sweet stuff. If you are looking for like a code first way to spin up a local development environment, Aspire is really cool. And it supports MongoDB, Rust, JavaScript, Dino, I think even. A lot of different things. It even supports the database that I'm using. It supports just arbitrary like PowerShell, Docker, stuff like that. So you can basically define your entire local development environment in code and have it be consistent across your whole team. And then you get all the niceties of like distributed tracing with open telemetry support. It can run, seed scripts to import your entire database, which is pretty sweet if you are working on a team and need to make things more consistent. So anyway, I would just go check out aspire.dev, which is their new link for the non.netified Aspire.
Yeah, it's like I've said before, it's a lot like Docker Compose, but you're using not YAML to do it.
Yeah, which allows you to be really dynamic with things. And you can, and I don't know if Docker Compose supports stuff that's not Docker containers, because Aspire does. That's the whole point of it. It's like you can run npm commands, you can spin up Vite, you can run PowerShell scripts, you can start at Docker services like Compose, but you can do so much more than that. And you can all just define it dynamically through environment variables or however else you want to configure your local development environment. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. I'll call back to dotnetconf a little bit as well and recommend that video from Stephen Taub about the performance improvements in .NET 10.
That was so good.
And
I agree
magic.
I agree with the top comment on YouTube, which is that it is criminal to only give Stephen Taub 25 minutes to talk about performance, because
give that man a microphone and a camera and let him go for hours.
So his annual blog post that he puts out for the .NET team is like performance in, .NET 8, .NET 9, .NET 10. The .NET 10 blog post is 200 pages long. If you print it out, it's 200 pages. So he's got a lot to say.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool stuff. Like they're doing some pretty neat tricks in the JIT and the .NET compiler to make it incredibly fast.
Yep, and this is why I enjoy being a .NET dev at least for my backend stuff. Well, it's time for the Minnesota long goodbye. I know you're sick, so we should probably keep it pretty short so you can get some rest. But did you have anything that jumped out to you as we were talking?
I think the big thing that's jumping out to me is the theme of this week, and kind of like accidentally the theme of what I've been working on lately, is that tooling is kind of everything in like adoption of a thing. Like if you have a thing and no one can use it, no one is going to use it. So I'm looking at, some of the tooling now that we're seeing from like V Plus, or we're seeing from TSGo. The kinds of things that this is going to enable is just really going to accelerate what we're able to do. So I think tooling is super important. We should be focusing on our tools. And before the call, I was actually complaining about how I don't have time to sit and debug a thing that's orthogonal to the task at hand.
Yeah.
I just need to get the thing done.
I know. So, that's why I spent 4 weeks basically redoing the local development setup for my app, because it was getting to be so annoying. And this is, specific to my situation, which is I'm on .NET Framework, which is the older .NET, which requires Windows. I could not work on my app unless it was on my desktop computer, because it was just so much of a pain to spin up the local development environment on my laptop. And forget about the Mac. Like, I can't even use Mac right now if I want to work on the web app itself. If I want to work on the front end, that's okay, but I can't preview it on Mac OS because I can't run my web app because it's .NET Framework. So I switched everything to use Docker locally, right? So now it's pretty reproducible, and it works on Windows and it works on Linux, because now my production environment is also Docker based, and that's on Linux, except for obviously the web app, which is still Windows. But now I've got, I don't have to deal with it anymore. Like, I start up my Visual Studio solution, and by the way, I'm using Visual Studio 2026, and the marketing is on point. It is much faster. It's way faster than 2022, so I do recommend upgrading.
I need to retract my former statements about Visual Studio.
Yeah, I would like to not have to use it, so that I could work on my Mac, but whatever. For our Windows users, 2026, very good. But anyway, now my local development environment spins up. I've, fixed that issue that I talked about with the Docker build context. So it's not a gigabyte anymore. It's only 17 megabytes. So much, much faster, like local development loop. And it's still not ideal. I'm still not using Vite. I'm not using a dev server that can like do hot reloading. But things like that would just improve my local development loop so much better and is like a motivating factor into like migrating off of .NET Framework and onto .NET Core, ASP.NET Core, so like .NET 10 or whatever, so that I can get those modern tools because I'm just missing out on those. But yeah, I think what we'll do, just getting meta here for a second, is that this is too long to put into the episode. But me and Eric were just having a very long discussion about migrations and rewrites and stuff like that. And you know what's coming up pretty soon is the holidays. And both me and Eric were probably going to be kind of busy during the holidays. And I was thinking we might put together a special episode where we take director's cut from like a bunch of our, previous edits, things that have not been published onto the podcast, because sometimes we have side conversations that are pretty fun, like this one. And we'll just put them all into an episode and we'll just do a special cut of that. And so you can kind of get our thoughts on things that are just sometimes beyond TypeScript, beyond software development.
Director's commentary.
Yeah, director's commentary. So we might do a TypeScript FM director's cut for the holiday season.
The Snyder cut.
Yeah. But anyway, to be continued. We'll have to talk about this later. But I think for now, listeners, have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com and Eric is at ericownerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.